Welcome, foolish mortals, to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. I am your host, Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince. And it's my 400th episode, y'all! And since it's Halloween, tonight we're going to the happiest place on earth to talk about a spooky, dark ride that just turned 50 years old this year. The Haunted Mansion. Originally, the Disney Imagineers were assigned to create a New Orleans-themed area in the Disneyland theme park with a promised thieves' market, a pirate wax museum, and a haunted house walkthrough. But after Walt Disney's visit to the Winchester Mystery Mansion in San Jose in Northern California, everything changed. The Haunted Mansion is a mix between a walkthrough and an Omnimover ride system. The previous Disneyland ride to use that system was Adventures Through Inner Space. After years of operation since its opening in 1969, the ride has built itself a reputation by frightening and entertaining guests with haunting visuals and grim sense of humor. There's even a Haunted Mansion ride in Walt Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland, and there are two other mansion rides, like the Phantom Manor in Paris and Mystic Manor in Hong Kong. And as I said in my blog of The Nightmare Before Christmas last year, ever since 2001, during the Halloween and Christmas seasons, the Haunted Mansion ride becomes the Haunted Mansion Holiday. Now, I remember going on the regular Haunted Mansion ride for my first time a long time ago with my grandmother when I was either about 4 or 5 years old. And you may find this funny, but I actually fell asleep as soon as I boarded my dune buggy. But after I went on it, a couple years after my sister was born, both of us were traumatized, not only from Paul Frees' voice acting as the ghost host, but from the lightning effects in the stretching room. But don't take my word for it, take a watch and see for yourself.
Is this haunted room actually stretching?
Maybe.
Or is it your imagination? And consider this dismaying observation. This chamber has no windows and no doors. Which offers you this chilling challenge to find a way out. Of course, there's always my way.
But at least the rest of the ride is okay, and I think the song Grim Grinning Ghosts is a really catchy tune performed by Thurl Ravenscroft. Despite the fact that my first time hearing this song was by watching the Disneyland Fun sing-along VHS. However, not long before I was about to leave elementary school and move on to junior high, I discovered that Disney was going to release a movie based on the ride, which is kind of funny since they did make another one during the summer of the same year. But anyway, does this movie still hold up? Well, let's find out. Released on November 26, 2003, the movie is The Haunted Mansion. So, let's get started. On the day of their anniversary, workaholic real estate agent Jim Evers and his wife Sarah receive a strange phone call from a man named Ramsley. he requests that Sarah come to the mysterious Gracey Manor. Jim decides to turn it into an opportunity to check out a possible gold mine in real estate. But to please Sarah, he claims it as a family trip, bringing the children along. Once there, Ramsley, the butler, insists that they stay for the night when a storm floods the road. The Evers are then introduced to Master Edward Gracey, who seems strangely obsessed with Sarah. Jim goes off to talk with Gracey about selling the house, but he ends up getting stuck in a secret passage instead. The kids follow a mysterious ghost ball to the attic, where they see a painting of a woman who looks exactly like Sarah. Jim and the kids eventually discover the mansion's dark secret from Madame Leota, who tells them that Sarah is in great danger, and in order to save her and lift the mansion's curse, they must lead the ghost to the light. After some spooky adventures and surprises, the family manages to save the manor and Sarah, all while learning a valuable lesson about togetherness. So, what do I think of the movie? Well, in my opinion, this was a really thrilling movie, and after watching this movie again, I still enjoy it, but, well, maybe not as much as I used to, though. But anyway, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, this movie was the 5th film based on a Disneyland ride. The previous films being Tower of Terror, Mission to Mars, The Country Bears, and Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. The mansion scenes were filmed at Sable Ranch in Santa Clarita, California. The main building was constructed over a period of weeks, while the cupola and chimneys on the top of the mansion were computer generated. The rest of the movie was shot in New Orleans and surrounding areas. Also to note, the paper boy in the opening scene is the nephew of director Rob Minkoff. Also, like the Lonesome Manor in Epic Mickey, the mansion's exterior design is a mix of the attraction's exteriors in both Disneyland and Walt Disney World. With the iron/glass conservatory on the right side and the pillars in the central structure. Plus, there are 3 hidden Mickeys that can be found throughout this movie. One being the paddock at the gates, another when the executioner's axe nearly hits Jim, and the third one which is briefly seen when Ramsley pours the poison into the goblet of wine during the wedding scene. Also, before leaving the mansion via ghost carriage to find the mausoleum, Ezra exclaims, "There's always my way," which is a pivotal line of dialogue from the stretching room pre-show from the ride. The costume and special effects designers wanted the ghost characters to become more dead the farther they were from the mansion. While Ezra and Emma looked human inside the house, their leaving it caused them to become blue and transparent. The zombies in the mausoleum were described as the deadest, as they are farthest away. Rick Baker, the chief costume designer, did the prosthetic makeups for the zombies inside the mausoleum, using skull heads for the zombie design. He also designed one of the zombies as an old man in order to, well, not frighten the viewers. Also to note, this was the first film to air on the Disney Channel to contain any profanity besides hell or damn. It also contains the phrase big-ass termites uttered by Eddie Murphy. What I like about this movie is that it contains many Easter eggs from the Haunted Mansion ride. For example, aside from Ezra's quote that I mentioned earlier, the scene where Master Gracey hangs himself is another reference from the stretching room. Except in this movie, he's not a skeletal corpse. We also get to see the portrait gallery with ghostly paintings that can change into something horrifying, as well as these statue busts that watch you. And a door that breathes in and outwards. Plus, we get a few scenes in the ballroom/dining room and, well, the seance room where Madame Leota lives, and in the attic. And during the graveyard scene, we get to see many ghosts, including the hitchhikers and the singing head busts, who are played by the Disneyland Dapper Dans. Also, I do have to give this movie credit for including the library, which is the only scene from the ride that's not included in the California version. The library can only be found in the Floridian and the Tokyo version. As for the story, well, it was okay. I mean, I did like the mystery theme to it, though it wasn't too scary, with the exception of a few jump scares, a zombie escape scene, and a fire monster that came from the fireplace. However, I did feel that this movie's plot felt pretty similar to the Phantom Manor story. Also, I think the humor in this movie is good too, though some of it can be a little mature for younger audiences though. But anyway, let's move on to the cast. For Jim Evers, Disney hired Eddie Murphy, who has been in films like The Nutty Professor, Dr. Dolittle, Shrek, Mulan, Dreamgirls, and Norbit. In the movie, Jim is a successful yet workaholic real estate agent who is often late for family gatherings, but he tries his best to make up for it. In my opinion, like many characters Eddie Murphy breathes life into, Jim can be funny and paranoid at times, but I do like that he does all that he can in order to save his wife from the mansion's curse. Jim's wife and partner, Sarah, is played by Marsha Thomason, who also portrays as Master Gracey's lover, Elizabeth Henshaw. In my opinion, Sarah's role in this movie is really important due to the fact that she's being mistaken for a person who looks identical to her, kind of like with Liz McGuire and Isabella Parigi. Also, I think Sarah is very relatable, since she doesn't really like it when Jim breaks his promises. As for Elizabeth, well, while she does get a lot of build-up throughout this movie, she doesn't really appear on screen as often due to her spirit lingering as a ghost orb. When she was alive, Elizabeth was the daughter of one of the mansion's servants, and she was of very low social class. But she did develop a close relationship with Master Gracey. The only times we do see Elizabeth in her ghost ball form is when she leads the kids to the attic, and when she revives Sarah at the end of the movie. Next we have the Evers children, Megan and Michael, played by Ari Davis and Mark John Jeffries. Megan is a 13-year-old girl who is sometimes impatient and Michael is a 10-year-old boy who is arachnophobic. In my eyes, both of these kids are decent characters, and I think Megan is interesting due to the fact that she can speak Latin, and believe it or not, I was exactly Megan's age when this movie was released. As for Michael, well, I think it was no surprise that Mark Jeffries based his character's arachnophobia on Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter series. But I'm glad that Michael got to overcome his fears while saving his dad and sister from the zombies by unlocking the mausoleum door. Master Edward Gracey, the polite and friendly owner of Gracey Manor, is played by Nathaniel Parker, best known from Shakespeare's Hamlet and Stardust. In the movie, Edward longs for his long-lost Elizabeth to return to him after her apparent suicide. Fun fact, during the opening scene of the movie, Nathaniel Parker had a great difficulty trying to carry Elizabeth up the staircase, which is shown on the expressions on his face. This was due to her slippery silk dress. What I like about Mr. Gracey is that he's very welcoming, and I find it surprising that he's named after a Disney Imagineer named Yale Gracey. I also like the part where Mr. Gracey gives Sarah a tour of the mansion while discussing his past and his grandfather's death. He even shows Sarah Elizabeth's wedding dress in the attic. And during the ending, I liked when Edward saved Jim from falling into Tartarus. Next we come to Madame Leota, played by Jennifer Tilly, best known from Liar Liar, Bartok the Magnificent, Pixar's Monsters, Inc., and Disney's Home on the Range. Leota is a gypsy woman whose spirit is encased in a crystal ball. In the ride, Madame Leota can be found in the seance room summoning spirits so that they can play a random musical instrument of her choice. Also, you may remember that during the old days of the ride, Leota's crystal ball used to be sitting on a table. But after they fixed up a few things in 2006, now we see her floating. And during the Haunted Mansion holiday, we see Leota's crystal ball decorated like a Christmas ornament, while she recites 13 Days of Christmas with tarot cards floating around her. Fun fact, Leota's face was modeled and named after Disney Imagineer Leota Toombs. No, seriously, that's her real name, folks. And she was voiced by Eleanor Audley, whom you may remember as Lady Tremaine from Cinderella and Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. Leota has also appeared in such stuff like Epic Mickey and ABC's Once Upon a Time. Anyway, in the movie, despite her bad start with Jim earlier, Leota tells Jim, along with Michael, Megan, Ezra, and Emma, that in order for the mansion's curse to be lifted, Master Gracey has to know the truth. And she instructs them to find a key that's hidden in a black crypt in a mausoleum, and then use the key to unlock a trunk in the attic to find Elizabeth's letter. In my opinion, I think Leota can be pretty eccentric and mysterious, but underneath it all, she's very intelligent and sometimes helpful. And I like the scene where she gives Jim words of motivation in order for him to try again to save his family. Next up are Ezra and Emma, played by Wallace Shawn and Dinah Stybay. Ezra is a bumbling footman who worries about getting into trouble, and Emma is a nervous but helpful maid who seems terrified of Ramsley. In my opinion, despite the fact that they work for Ramsley, I find these two to be decent and sometimes humorous supporting characters. Like when they escort Jim and the kids to the graveyard while driving a hearse with a skeletal horse. Finally, we have Ramsley, played by Terrence Stamp, who has been in Superman 2, Star Wars Episode 1, Get Smart, and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Ramsley is the mysterious butler of Gracey Manor, who serves as a fatherly figure to Master Gracey. But later on in the movie, he is revealed to be Elizabeth's murderer. You know, Jim's reaction to Ramsley being the bad guy kind of makes me think of that game Clue. Anyway, the reason why Ramsley killed Elizabeth with poisoned wine is because he wanted to prevent Edward from abandoning his home and his lineage. Also, aside from a few jump scares caused by Ramsley, he has also been doing a prank phone call with Jim while he was wandering around the mansion, as well as spying on Jim through Leota's crystal ball. And after finding out the truth, Ramsley locks up the kids in a trunk and throws Jim out of the mansion. He even forces Sarah to marry Edward and attempts to drag Jim into Tartarus with him. And now let's move on to my final words. Overall, the Haunted Mansion is good, but not really perfect. Yes, the plot may be a tad cliched, but it has an interesting mystery theme. The atmosphere of the Haunted Mansion stays true to the original Disneyland ride, and it does bring back a lot of fond memories too. The Evers family are decent main characters. Edward Gracey is a friendly and polite kind of person. Ezra and Emma are, well, pretty good supporting characters. And Ramsley was a cold and a surprising villain. As for Madame Leota, while she is mysterious and eccentric, she can sometimes be a very helpful character. Anyway, I hear that in the future, director Guillermo del Toro is planning to do a remake of this movie with less comedy and more scary and fun. If this is true, then I'm heavily rooting for you, Guillermo. As for my rating for this movie, I'll give it a 70% out of 100. Yes, it's good if you're a Disneyland fan, but I wouldn't really consider this movie a masterpiece either. And now that I think about it, I hear that there will be a new Disneyland-based movie being released next summer. But I'll get to that when it gets released. And so concludes this year's Nightmare Month. I'd like to thank all of you boils and ghouls for joining me for this haunting season. And here's to 400 episodes. Be sure to hurry back in November for my next episode. Mustang Power. Oh, and Happy Halloween.